Advertising is obviously one of the very important aspects of any business, communicating to your customers and communicating to the public at large and to the environment. Whatever it is that you're selling or trying to convince people with, that's done through advertising and through communication. So if it's such an important aspect of business, then it becomes very critical that the communication and that advertising quality be adhering to whatever standards exist, whether it's within the region or it's in the rest of the world. For many years, there were not too many institutions outside the advertising agencies who had any say in whatever was going on in the advertising world. And as far as I know, from whatever I've heard, because I've not been here in Pakistan for a very long time, PAS was formed as a representative of the advertisers themselves, and perhaps their effort really is to, at the end of the day, improve the quality of advertising in Pakistan. I think that's really the critical factor. So in answer to this question, what I would say is that when a body of people who are linked with the advertising world, they get together once in a year and look at all the material that has been produced within that year and try to recognize and try to pick up those advertising pieces which they consider to be the best. I think it helps from year to year to improve on quality. I think that's the way I would put it. And behind that quality, of course, is the issue of creativity as to what sort of creative process is going on in advertising. So I think all said and done, it has to do with quality, and that's why I think whatever PAS is doing, I would say is very, very important. The other thing which is also happening is that there is a body or there is a forum in which all these advertisers and of course the advertising agencies get together once in a year. So that's a great achievement. For example, during the process of actual judging in which I've been involved in the past, it's very nice to see that people from different backgrounds and although related to advertising and from the corporate world get together at one place and they interact and they talk and they debate and they disagree and they fight. All these things happen. So it's very nice to see that. So perhaps there are a few roles that it performs. One, as I said earlier, has to do with quality, and the other has to do with bringing people together. I have experienced in my career that at the end of the day, it's all about people and it's all about teamwork. So if these people get together and talk to each other, something good always comes out. So I think that's the best way that I can respond to that. The future is of which about 10 years ago would have been quite unpredictable, what is happening today. And that's particularly to do with the arrival of social media and then the development of social media. So not only this is a very direct way of communicating with the public at large, but it's also a very cost-effective medium. And I think that's having a big impact on the way things were done previously, the conventional way of, going through advertising agencies, for example. So I think as far as I see, particularly the advertising agencies, we will have to really rethink their strategies as to how are they going to continue to make the way they do advertising relevant, because social media seems to be really taking over. In actual fact, every person, every member of the public holds the advertising key in his own hands because they can communicate. I mean, they can record something and communicate and send it out. It's a lot of technology-based future that I see for. Well, the jury's role is to look at whatever advertising material has been produced within that year and compare them and then judge them and to come up with recommendations for what they consider to be some of the best pieces that have been developed during that year. It is very important because this responsibility is obviously given to people who have had a fair amount of experience in advertising, both in having developed advertising over the years, and in also helping and developing teams of people who work with them. So if somebody like me has worked in the corporate world for say 35 years, 40 years, then a lot of that time has also been spent on advertising. And during the initial years, of course, one was in the front line developing these concepts and creative work. And then later on in actually teaching and training and passing on the knowledge that you have developed, not only in Pakistan but abroad. Like I've lived in Australia and in Indonesia and in China during my corporate career. So I've been involved in advertising and all these. And I've been on the global boards of Unilever, who have something to do with advertising. So that exposure has been extremely important. And that's something that you pass on. And I think this is a very good forum which helps you to do that. Needless to say, they have to be transparent, because and we all know that it is human nature to have some sort of bias in your hearts or in your minds. So there's always a subjective view that people can have. And the best way to make sure that the transparency is there is by process, to ensure that the process through which the whole judgment is taking place, that is foolproof. And then of course also put the sort of people who are very experienced in these fields. So I think they will help you to develop those processes to ensure that the transparency remains. And I think that has to do with creativity. Wherever you come from, whatever companies that you represent or advertising agencies that you represent, the one thing that you must focus on is the creative process, and to identify people who have natural creative ability on the one hand, and others who don't have the natural creative abilities, is to help them develop that, because both of these can be done. That's the one way which will help Pakistan to improve its advertising quality and be able to communicate to it, because at the end of the day you're accountable to the consumer, because they are the ones who are using your product, and your existence and your well-being of whatever entity that you're representing is dependent upon the consumer. If in the end they don't like you, they're not going to patronize you. So you're accountable to them. So make sure that your own creative processes are the best, and that you learn not only from within but from outside also. There's a lot of good advertising going on within the region, which I have seen personally. So I think the one thing, if I pick up, that has to do with the creative side of communication, is to focus on that.